Hey friends, it's your children's pastor, Jackie Monastra. Welcome to a brand new series called Resilient, where we are going through the book of Daniel. But, friends, I love fresh, brand new Play-Doh. There's nothing like a fresh container of Play-Doh. There's nothing like homemade Play-Doh when you make it at home and it's nice and warm and squishy. It is the best. I made this Play-Doh at my house, and my son Ben picked the color yellow because he loves the color yellow. See, Play-Doh is the best because you can squish it, and you can squash it, and you can mold it to be exactly whatever your mind can imagine. I made a heart, I made a star, I made a cute little snowman. It kind of reminds me a little bit of our lesson for today. But before we get to that, here is what you need to know. Today, we are starting a new series, like I said, called Resilient. Have you ever heard that word before? To be resilient means that you can stand strong when hard stuff comes along. It means that you can bounce back after bad things happen. It means that just like Play-Doh, you can be molded and squished and shaped and still come out the other end even stronger. To learn more about this resilient stuff, we chose the perfect book of the Bible. Do you remember what I said it was? Daniel. I can't wait to explore more of the book of Daniel with you over the next 5 weeks. So, our story today begins with Daniel and his friends. They're in this place that isn't their home. Daniel was from Jerusalem, and a king from a super faraway land came and took over Jerusalem. In fact, they were taken away from their home to a super faraway land called Babylon. That sounds like Daniel was being shaped and molded, and that couldn't have been easy to be taken away from your home to a brand new land. Now, this is where our story picks up, where the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, asked that Daniel and some of the other people taken from Jerusalem get to work in his kingdom. Let's check out our very first story. If you have a Bible, grab it. We're going to turn to the book of Daniel, chapter 1. We're going to read verses 8 through 21. They say this: "But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods. Now God had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel. But he responded, 'I am afraid of my lord the king, who has ordered that you eat this food and wine. If you become pale and thin compared to the other youths your age, I'm afraid that the king will have me beheaded.' Daniel spoke with the attendant who had been appointed by the chief of staff to look after Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. 'Please test us for 10 days on a diet of vegetables and water,' Daniel said. 'At the end of the 10 days, see how we look compared to the other young men who are eating the king's food. Then make your decision in light of what you see.' The attendant agreed to Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young men who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So after that, the attendant fed them only vegetables instead of the food and wine provided for the others. God gave these 4 young men an unusual aptitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom, and God gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meanings of visions and dreams. When the training period ordered by the king was completed, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the royal service. Whenever the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians and enchanters in the entire kingdom. Daniel remained in the royal service until the first year of the reign of King Cyrus." This story in Daniel teaches us a lot of really good things, but I'm going to sum it up in 2 points. If you're taking notes, here we go. Point number 1, we are being transformed. Just like our Play-Doh, we are being molded and changed and squished and created into something new. Daniel and his friends were taken to a new land with a new language and food and people and a way of life. King Nebuchadnezzar tried to change all of what Daniel and his friends had ever known. He asked them to give up their old way of life and to accept this new way. But Daniel knew that if he trusted God and he continued to live the way God was asking him to live, that it would be God who changed and molded his heart. Just like Daniel, we have things that change and mold our heart too. The people we listen to, our friends, families, teachers, they help mold us and change us. The things that we watch on TV and YouTube change and mold us too. So do the sports we play, music we listen to, video games we play, places we go, the list goes on and on. You are being changed and molded every single day. Sometimes you're being changed for the better, and sometimes you're being changed for the worse. It just matters whose voice or whose influence in your life is the biggest. Who you spend your time with and what you spend your time doing changes you. You can choose to spend time to talk to and to learn from God first. Just like how Daniel chose to listen and obey God, you can choose that too. Choose to listen to God first. Choose to obey what he asks you to do. Which brings me to point number 2. Point number 2, with God's help, we can be faithful. We can be faithful to do what God has asked us to do when we make sure that we're choosing God first. We are choosing to love him and to love others with his love first. When we make God's voice the loudest by reading his words in the Bible, it changes how we see the world. When we choose to make God's voice the loudest by praying and talking with him, it changes how we love others. When we choose to make God's voice the loudest by going to church or watching online, it changes how we live our lives. When we choose to make God's voice the loudest by surrounding ourselves with people who know God and can help us know more about God too, it changes us. With God's help, we can be faithful to trust and follow him in hard times. So, what are you letting mold and squish and change and transform you? Think about who you spend your time with. Think about where you go and what you do each week. Think about how much time you spend reading your Bible, how much time you spend talking with God and learning more about him. All of the things you do change and squish and mold and shape your heart. With God's help, as you learn more about him, he will help you to be resiliently faithful. All right, friends, I'll see you next time. Bye.